morning, everybody. And everybody already saw what happened, what I showed to you earlier. So I want to talk to you a little bit more into details about these features. Although there's only one command, but I think this one command will give us a little bit more of the flexibility and possibility to what you would like to do. Because there's really good information in the log files that we have. And to be able to utilize it in different ways other than dealing with recovery and storage and restoring would be a great idea. Okay. So we talked about the context of record history in the business applications. A lot of time when we talk about the database auditing, and the first thing come in mind is, you want to find out what happened to your data. And those are the things that requires implementation on your part in order for you to track those information yourself. And over the years, there's so many people that have come up with different ways to do it. And to be honest, I mean, we have this, tracking features already, which is, stuff that we have inside of 4D. The log file is definitely contain a bunch of the information. Now, when we look at the log file and we're trying to find out what's inside the log file, usually you don't see it. Now, if you actually open up an MSC, you can see it. You can see partial of the information that you have in the log file, part of the activity analysis window. You can even export it out into a semicolon delimited file. It's not a tab delimited, which is great. I mean, at least you get some stuff out of the log file. The actual data and the value itself also get exported along, except that it's not in a format that is easily parsable with any other application. And it's kind of funky too if you look at the way the information got exported out. Now, I want to just quickly go over some of the basic stuff that happen when you performing any kind of database operation, right? So for example, you have different terminals that's connecting to your 4D server. Now, any one of these operations, whether it's creation, modification, or deletion, they all get logged into your log files. Now, and they get logged into the log file in the way that you can actually traverse back and find out what happened. And this is how the log integration come into play, because if you think about how you used for the backup, when you restore the backup and you're integrating a log file, it actually has all the sequence that happens after that backup. So integrating that log file into the restored version of your backup allows you to come back to where you were, which is, we're using that concept in a way that it works really well for restore and recovery. Now, with the new command in R4, 15 R4, the log file to JSON, the way I view this feature is that you can actually expand the possibility of how you use the log file, right? Not just the backup and recovery anymore. Some of these information that you can see, operation type, name, and all this stuff is really great. It also shows you a key pair of the field and the data as well. Not only that, it gives you additional information like who the user is, or even from what workstation. So some of those information really helps when you have to do some kind of analysis and tracking. So the information that comes in, 4D does it automatically. You don't have to do anything. The only thing that you need to do is, convert it into the format that you can actually use it in a different project or any way that you want to use it for. Now the command itself is very simple to use. You tell the command basically the path to a folder that you want to save the log file. Now, if the log file needs to be split up into a number of segments, it will do so. And you can also set the size of the exported file. For example, you have a log file that is, what, 50 megabytes. If you want to export it out into a JSON file, just imagine that the application that has to parse that in, right? Just read 50 megabytes to parse it. That's crazy. You want to chunk it up, right? So you can determine the size of the log file that you want to export. So let's say you can split it up into 5 megabytes at the most. So it has, what, 10 files created for you. Now the path name, if you don't specify this, it's going to use the current log file in your database as the current path. Otherwise, you can specify any log file that you have on your disk. The last thing, which is the mode, which is, I think it depends on what you want to do. With the field name and the field ID, you can tell the command to export and has the specific field name and the data, key pair like that, or it can give you the ID name and just the data. Okay, it's quite simple to use. I mean, I can't get any more simpler than that. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the demonstration. A lot of the stuff that I want to discuss over here is more about how you actually utilizing these features in the different ways. All right, so I'm going to start off with just a simple database here. All right. Well, first I'm going to go ahead and log in as the designer, just to talk about some of the things we have here. So let's start with a simple database structure. So we have some of these information, different type of information in the data in the table. People, first name, last name, different values. So if I'm actually going to import some data, okay, actually I'm going to switch the user. I'm not going to be administrator for this one. Let's try logging in as someone else. Okay, let's try maybe Jack. All right, I have a code here to read in some data from an external file. Okay, now I have some data in there. Oops, not that. Okay, so just a simple data, just read in. Okay, so you can see that. Now, I'm logging in as Jack. I import in the data, okay? Again, as you can imagine, there's already some data in here. Just to show you just a quick view of what I described earlier. So if you open up MSC, you can see all the operations that happen inside of the current log file. Now, if you choose to export, you can. For example, I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick export here. I'll save that on the desktop and just display it with the text wrangler. Okay, so that's sort of the information that you will see. It's in the delimited file format, but it's semicolon delimited. And there's no entity or any kind of pairing of the field or information that you can relate to, especially, I mean, some of this stuff is just, you have the operation number, the action, but when it comes to the value and the actual record itself, it just shows the value. It works to a certain point, but there's limitation to it. So I'm going to go ahead and log out and log back in as a different user and just do some kind of manipulation to it so we can kind of see what happened. Let's try Mindy. Okay. Let's go ahead and make some changes to this. Okay, so Samantha, well, she likes to be called Sam, so let's go ahead and save that, and maybe something happened. Okay, let's change another record. So, well, this guy apparently not single anymore. He's married. He's no longer employed, just got fired. Save that. Okay. Now, we have made some changes. So let's go ahead and take a look at what happened if we actually save this information. Let me clear this out so it won't interfere with anything. We're going to go ahead and export the data out now, okay? Now we have the history folder here. Let's hide that. So in this folder, now this morning, you only saw one file. Actually, there were 3 files that I exported out. I just hide the other 2, set it to invisible. This is just a little secret. So along with the JSON file that I exported with the command, I also took a liberty to export out the structure of the database because I want to be able to have the name of the table, the ID, and everything that I can use in somewhere else. Now, along with that, I want to export the user list as well because it's all you get from the JSON file is this user ID. So in order for me to identify who's, I have to be able to refer back to the user list inside of 4D. I also exported those. So I am going to use another application to read it in, the information in. So now this is going to be the same application that you saw this morning. Okay. So right now, there's nothing in here, so we can go through and just read the information in. So what's going on here is basically I'm just going to go ahead and select the history, basically the JSON file. At the moment, only one file is being read inside of this application. So you can see that not a lot of operations at this point. It's only 51 operations. We'll work with that. And I can scroll through and, at the beginning, if you can see that there are some operations such as the open data, close data, that has something to do with the actual database running and closing. So afterwards, you can see that now we start reading in the data. I create context, right? And then there's some other stuff like modify blobs, create records. All of those things tells you what happened inside of the database. Now, the blob and some pictures or object field has a little bit of a uniqueness to it. I'll talk to you a little bit about it later. But it tells you every single thing that happened in the database. Now, you can make the decision to only care about a certain set of the data or read in every single thing if you want. And let me go back here. If you look closely here, this part is the part that I was talking about, field. Now, this is the essential part because you have the actual value of the record at that time of the operation. So the create record operation happened. Those are the values that being saved inside of your database. It also, you can see that it shows, I choose to use the field ID. I could even use the field name as well. That's also an option. But this way, I have sort of a static picture of what happened to the record at any given time. Again, the extra data here is also important, which is it shows you not only I think in the delimited file version, you only get the username of the machine, not the actual user of the database. So in this version, in this exported information from in a JSON, you'll be able to have those information more precise. It has the process name as well, so this way you can track down to what happened to the record. So in here, I built in a little utility to convert all of this information into a record in this database. So in order for me to do really simple query or any kind of filtration to the data, I can do so. I'm also reading in the structure file as well as the user file that I exported out earlier. Let's go ahead and try that. Now I have all this information in, which is now is to us as the database people, it's easier for us to take a look at this information. As you can see that different type of information happen all the time. If you look closely, we have the timestamp. It tells you exactly what happened. But again, if you look at the JSON file, when you export it out, it didn't look anything like this. It has the format of the time in GMT. So there's a code in there that I use to convert those information into date and time. And as you can see, everything is done from the same single machine, so there's no surprise there. But if you have multiple machines in your organization, different users, or even if a single machine allows different users to log in, you'll be able to find out what happened and from that terminal, as well as what happened from specific user as well, because this information is very clearly distinguish the differences between the user machine and the application user. Now let's take a look at this option here. So as I said earlier, you have an option now to kind of filter because we're reading the information inside the 4D database, so it's really fair game. We can build some kind of tools that will allow us to do some kind of filtration. For example, if you look at, let's say we'll take this example. Now the record was created, there's a modified blob here. Actually, the earlier version, right now there's a little bug in the code where when you do a blob creation, when you export it out, there's a bad conversion. It's supposed to be create blob, not modify blob. So just so you know, a bug has been filed. It should be fixed soon. But this is supposed to be create blob because this is a new record. So along with that, 4D perform creation of the record. And then these are the information that it's just going to put into that record. Now later on, the modification happened. I just happen to be resaving the same information. But again, 4D take that as an operation, even though nothing changed. 4D take that as a full stamp of what happened to your record. Again, I redid it again. So let me find something that has some good data here. Okay. So that was the record that we manipulated earlier. So first I logged in as Jack. I read in the data. The data was created as well as blob, that was created pulling the picture in. Now, later time, I log in as Mindy. Now Mindy makes some changes to this record, change the marital status as well as the employment status. So these type of things, you'll be able to backtracking to what happened to your record. I know the database auditing is quite important to a large organization, many organizations these days, and even enforced by the business rule. So this feature actually going to help you kind of track down what happened to any of the record in your organization at any given time. Now, let's take a look at the actual implementation of this database here. Again, the first command that we want to focus on is the log file to JSON, which is just one single command, which is very simple and easy. Okay, so, sorry. Now, when you launch the database, this is the method you want to kind of focus on, okay? Now, in this method, it will allows you to select a folder where you have your history. Now, you can manipulate it in any way that you find right for you. In this case, we start off by looking into the history folder. If the history folder is there, it's great. And then the log file to JSON. Now, the log file to JSON basically just right now, I didn't include any of the path in there, so it's going to use an existing log file that's being operated on. It's going to export it out to the location. In this case, I'm saving it in the history folder, and I also create a sort of a timestamp as the name of the folder, so this way, if I'm running this code again, it goes into another folder and doesn't replace the current one. Now, the segment size, for the moment, I set it to 5 megabytes. Now, you can choose to a different value if you want. And then the next step, this is just an extra step because I know that I'm going to be reading in and utilize some of this information in my log viewer. So I went ahead and and use the command export structure to export out the information that I'm going to use later. Now, if you choose the log file to JSON with the mode of the field name, again, you have the field name, but you still don't have some other information like tables and stuff. So you still might have to export out the structure information and then use it somewhere else as well. The bottom part here is basically just loading the user information and compose it in a JSON format, and then just save the user information onto the disk, and the name of the file just users.json. Very simple. Now, if you take a look at quickly what I have here, because I didn't show you what's inside. Actually, what am I doing? The one thing that I did not show this morning, which is the actual data that's inside of this file. If you look at it, it's kind of clumped together like this. Hold on. Right. So it's not in a pretty print format, and we did it on purpose because we want to save you this space. Now, you can manipulate this file any way you want, and in 4D, there's a command that you can format it, very simple to use, JSON, stringified, and then just choose the option to make sure that it looks okay. But the purpose of the command is to just dump out the log information into a JSON. It also doesn't really concern if if we have extra space to make it look pretty. You can take care of that afterwards. In fact, 4D is, you can use any application or some tools out there to format the data as well. Now, the user file, if you actually open up this file again, I save it in the format that is not as pretty print, so you're going to see stuff like that. Okay. But the goal of this file is for me to be able to use it in another application where I can link up the user ID as well as the username. So it's easier for the user, for whoever's viewing this information, to be able to identify what they're looking at. And the last thing is the structure.xml. I think this one should have the, okay, that's right. Let's try. Okay, this might be a little better. So this is something that we all know. We've used it before. You can either use the command to export out your structure file, or you can choose an option from your file menu in the design mode. Okay, and that's what you're going to get. So as you can see, there are information in here, the field name, the associated ID that is unique to the structure of your data file, of your application. So with those available to us, we are able to kind of merge them together. So that's how I was able to pull in the data, not only from the log file, the JSON log file. I pull in the data about the structure as well as the user, combine them together into a database that I can perform any kind of search or filter. Any questions so far? Yes. Any mic?
So it appeared that you have to be using the 4D password system in order to get the users. I was wondering if there was a way to interject or get around that. And then part two is that even though I'm journaling on all the tables, if I'm interested in just keeping a record history, say, of one particular table, how would I go about doing that? And maybe there's a timing consideration there about, would I do this once a day, kind of a batch thing, or would you see this as maybe even part of a trigger method where I go out and grab the information from that one record and write it someplace to a log file?
You can't really override what happened to the log file that way. Log file will record everything that goes into the database. Now, what we can do is the aftermath, which is what I did. The result of the log file, once you export it out, you'll be able to determine what you want to concentrate on and just exclude anything else that you don't want. In terms of the user, again, because of if you have your own password system or something like that, those information doesn't get logged as part of the user ID or stuff like that. So it depends on. I really don't see an easy way to tap into your own password system and make it part of the log file because of we don't record those stuff, and then it also depends on how you implement that as well. Some people build a password system in a way that once the user log in, they create a record stamp in specific user table. So those things, if you actually have done that, you may be able to identify by look at the information of that table. But again, it's still kind of weird because you will have a hard time associating that information from the user table, login table, with the rest of the table. Does that make sense? So I don't see an easy way to deal with that. Any other questions? Just stay here.
Yeah, I have my own user system that I use, and what I do is I track who's logged in, and when someone opens a record, I put their user ID in that in a field in that record, and it's saved as the last person who used it. So in the log file, that would be a changed field that would show up in the log file, and you could use that. Am I wrong about that?
Well, that'll be one way. Okay. I'm looking at, for example, you have that information change in that particular table for the user. But let's say you go, the same user, accessing another table and make some modification. There's already this association between that, what happened there, and what happened to the record, because we have no way of knowing that the same user that was logged into that table is the same person that make modification in this table. Because of the way log file behaves, it only tracks information from one table only.
One table at a time.
Right. One record is something happened to that record or something It's not multiple record in one sequence. One operation is one table, one record. Or even more than that, it's a context. It's within an operation. For example, you saw that I showed to you earlier with create blob, right? So I'm importing this information into the database. I'm also reading blob into this picture field. Now, as part of the record, it has a context that covers the whole record creation. So you're gonna see create blob, save blob information, and then create record. Again, those two is also part of the same context. But I don't see how that can be related to the other part of the database. That is, the user login, you put a stamp in there, that's great. That's pretty much the only thing that that the user login. But it could be any other user that manipulating this table as well.
Thank you.
Yes, Tony. Yeah, you can pass it on.
Just a note for those who are using this, if you modify a record, a blob in a record where the blob is marked to save outside of the record, I'm expecting that in this, if they only modify the blob and nothing else, you're only going to get information about the blob being modified and you won't get any other record information other than the primary key, just an FYI.
Right. Just when I show you about the field with the value, for the simple field type, you will be able to see them. For blob, you will not be able to see the content of the blob, but however, you will see the reference to the blob. Whether the blob saved inside or outside or not, I think inside the blob, inside the record, in the database, you get the ID. Now, if you save the outside the data file, you will get a path to that file that's saved on the disk. But you will not see the actual data that's saved inside of the blob. Okay? Yes.
So just to clarify then, when you do export log to JSON, you're exporting the entire log, and then when it gets reset on backup, that information is no longer available?
No. It's still going to be there. Basically, you're just reading, the command just read the content and give you the JSON version of it.
Right, but when the log file's reset on backup,
Yeah.
then that information can't be exported anymore.
Well, you can restore it and then run the same command on that file.
So are there any plans to do any kind of filtering for when you do the export? That way you could get just a certain table or a certain time?
I think it's similar to what Bob was just saying.
Right,
Yeah.
but if you're trying to get like an hourly update, you wind up repeating the same information each hour plus the next hours.
Right.
So.
I'm not sure if there's a plan right now. I think this is the first command that we have to deal with this kind of stuff. But definitely, I mean, the more you use it, the more use case going to come up. And we always would love to hear how you're going to use the feature. So if you feel, most of you feel that if we can add something into the command or the feature to make it easier for you, please join in and file the feature request on the forum, which is great. We have a more sort of a group effort to drive particular feature. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah. If you really want to do it every hour, why don't you just create journal files just like you were doing mirroring and then import that one? You create a new journal file every single hour, just like you were doing mirroring. Right?
Repeat that one more time.
Okay, if you wanted to just get hourly logs without repetition, when you do journaling, when you do mirroring, you're in effect creating a new log file, journal file, whatever you want. So you go create a journal file, you take the old journal file, you import it into wherever you're going to import it, and then you have the next journal file another hour later, you import it, and then you have it on an hourly basis, or a 15-minute basis, or a 2-day basis, or whatever you choose to do. So you really already have that functionality in a way.
You can. All of these stuff is really up to what you're trying to do. What the command allows you to do is it makes it in a form of format that you can actually use in a different ways. There's nothing to prevent you from doing different type of automation to track to create a journal file or to import or export. But the goal of the command is basically, here's the log file. You can't view the information inside. But if you want to take a look at some of the information inside that you can take advantage of, do any kind of auditing, right? You can do so. And it's readable because it's in a JSON. Now, 4D is not the only thing that you're going to use. You may be using some other tools out there that is capable to read in the JSON information to do some kind of analysis. It will give you that ability to do so. All right, any other questions? Okay, so
There's one more question.
yeah.
With object-based, with the new objects, I thought you were concerned there may be some special features that you needed to worry about with saving the object fields now.
Well, the object, when it goes into the log file, it goes in a similar fashion as with blob and object and pictures. You'll see it the same. You see the same operation name, create blob, modify blob. The only thing that you actually know that is an object field is probably through the name. At the moment, in internal 4D, it doesn't distinguish those information when it goes in. But again, there's some key element that 4D will use to recognize whether this is blob or an object or a picture. Yeah, so I'm not sure if that answered your questions.
I'm more concerned about inside the object itself.
Yeah, I mean, that's also because it's the same type of entity, that's what we call it. So you don't see it. You know that it has been modified, but you don't really know what's inside, what was changed. That's just one thing that we didn't export it out along with the rest of the data. Anyone else?
Sir, what did you not export with the data without?
Why didn't we want
What?
blob? The blob content.
You didn't export that with the...
No, you don't see it. You see the reference to the blob ID or the path to the blob file or whatever, but you don't see the content of that blob. When I showed to you earlier, you see the name, address and other stuff. The basic fields, yes, but not blob pictures or objects.
So if you want that, you still have to buy log tools.
Okay. All right, so all right, I think I'd like to go ahead and end the session here. If anyone have any more questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, thank you very much.